Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Danielle, founder of thesedge.org. And if you're with me live today, that's awesome. I'm a bit later than usual, so it should be interesting because this is the second time I've done one of these lives in my evening, which I wouldn't usually do, but it just happened to work out for the second time. And I noticed that the first time there was quite a lot of views, so maybe it's a better time to connect with some of you guys. If you're around, depending where in the world you are. I know a lot of our European friends will be sleeping right now. But anyways, so thank you for joining me. This is, let's see, day 14 of 20 in my 4 years in 4 weeks Facebook Live challenge, which I decided to do a few weeks ago in order to celebrate 4 years of having the sedge.org up and running. And so, yeah, each week I'm going over lessons learned in each of those years. So this week is all about year 3. And so if you want to check out some of the other themes and things that I've talked about, I've started to compile all of the videos onto my blog. So there's a main blog post, which will eventually have the links to all 20 posts. And I'll be adding kind of these Facebook Lives as we go. So I'll put the link in the comments here if you want to check that out and kind of stay up to date. Or, of course, you can catch up on the page here and look at all of the past videos, or come back and check out the next ones because there's a few more left. So anyways, today I want to talk about content creation. So this is one task that in the age of the internet is a very crucial one for many business owners. Whether you work online or you have a local brick and mortar store, or you do local services, or almost anything that you could find yourself working on requires an online presence these days. So social media is a big piece of that. And a lot of content, of course, gets created on social media, especially these days with, obviously, Facebook Live. Hello. It's a really neat thing to be able to engage with people like this. So that's one thing. But even no matter what your business is, you might find that you really want to have a blog and have a presence. Hey, Mustafa, good to see you. Content creation, yes. So let me know if you have any questions as I'm chatting, because the reason I wanted to talk about content creation and in the context of blogs, or however you end up sharing the content, blog is just a good home base. That was one thing that I was working a lot on in the 3rd year, and trying to find that rhythm and that consistency, and also that voice, and how I might be able to share my message in a more consistent way. And so getting a plan together for your blog and getting consistent with it is really a great way to do that. So in this 3rd year that I'm kind of reviewing right now, I only did 14 blog posts that year, which is an average of about once a month. And a lot of people do one a week, or again, depending on your industry. That was quite a bit for me. And actually, until this challenge, that was probably the most that was a pretty good average. Because as much as I wanted to try and be more consistent and communicate regularly, there's just so much going on, and it's not always at the top of the list, right? So anyways, in that 3rd year, I really was playing around with different ways to create content, and really just to find a rhythm. And so I want to share some of the tips that I have around that, in case this is something you're trying to do right now as well, or even with your existing blog, if you want some tips to improve that. So, I think you guys know basically why having a consistent content creation like a blog is important, but it helps you get your message out there. It helps you connect with the people that are going to want to work with you in terms of attracting readers organically, or having your clients come to your website and check out what you're up to, or what kind of work you do, or what your views are on things, or having people that already support you share that information with people in their networks. And it plays a lot of roles in kind of that network effect and getting that content everywhere. So that's really important, but it also helps you find the themes of your work and find your voice and find some resonance about what you want to talk about in your work and what it actually, by the act of writing or creating content, helps you get a sense of where you stand on all of the topics, not all of them, but where you stand on topics that are relevant to your beneficiaries, your target market, or your audience in general, or your peers, because you are naturally, of course, going to be sharing your opinions about all of those things that are relevant to your sphere of the world as it relates to your business. And it's one thing to think opinions or chat about them with a friend. It's another thing to kind of declare them into the internet and be okay and learn to be comfortable to stand with those viewpoints and those perspectives. Not that, you might be adversarial, but it takes a little bit of courage to put yourself out there and actually share what you're thinking about all of these things. So it takes some practice too. So if you're kind of struggling to get a consistent content strategy going, I would recommend playing around with different methods and different frameworks and different setups. So that's really what I was doing in this year with those 14 posts across the year. I did a few spotlights, so interviews of other social entrepreneurs to kind of get a peek into their business and what they're working on, their perspective on things. I did a few video series or videos that kind of connected into a theme, which I'm going to talk about more as well. I did some kind of long form posts that were lots of writing, and also some more kind of wrap up or posts that were kind of reflections of different events or things that I had been involved with. So those were, it was quite a variety of content, right? And of course, now you can see that now I'm doing a Facebook Live challenge, which is another kind of content creation. And this one is a little bit on hyperdrive because I decided to do it once a day, every day for 4 weeks, minus weekends. And that's another strategy that I think can be useful if you're just trying to get a feel for what you want to do and how you want to do it, is to play with all those different ideas and different methods. So try some videos, try some recorded videos, try some live videos, try some webinars, try writing blog posts, try like just more essay style. You can try interviewing people. You could try some audio. You could try compiling other people's ideas into your own posts. Like there's a million formats, right? So I think you'll find once you try a few different ones, you'll start to get a sense of which ones come easier to you and which ones are really tough. And you want to make your blog content strategy as easy as you can for yourself, and choose a methodology that's going to be a good fit with your strengths and what you like to do. So I know some people who exclusively only do videos and they just, don't like to write, but speaking comes really easy to them. So why not make that their content strategy? And if you do something like that, you can always pay or pay someone to transcribe it, or you can transcribe it yourself into kind of a written summary, which is really great for search engines and search engine optimization, so that Google can find your content, right? So that's one thing. Or audio, some people only do podcasts, and that's a really great format as well. But whatever comes naturally to you, but you got to give yourself take the pressure off and give yourself some time to just play around with it when you're just starting out. Because the easier it is to create in whatever format you pick, the easier it will be for you to be consistent, which is going to just, it's going to take that pressure off, and you'll feel so much more productive instead of having this one blog post hanging over your head for like 2 months thinking, I need to finish that. I want to share that, but like, it's not coming easy to me and it's a big chore and a big burden. You don't want your content creation to take up that much brain power. It should be more like a flow, a channel of all of the other things you're integrating as a result of your business and sharing that with the world so that your ideal people can find you. Because of course, if you're not sharing it, they won't know what your perspective is on things, and or they may never find you. So it is a really important thing. And now the other thing I wanted to touch on is ideas for the actual topics, right? So once you've played around with your methods or the style of content you want to create, you still need to figure out what the heck am I going to talk about? And again, there's so many resources about creating editorial calendars and, SEO optimized calendars and topics and blah, blah, blah. So you can definitely get into that whole sphere when you're ready. But to start out, try not to bog yourself down with too much technicalities and really just focus on finding the ways that are comfortable for you to share and sharing. So some ideas that I have for figuring out what to share is one really great thing to do that's productive from a strategic standpoint and makes the topics a lot easier is to plan your blog posts or your Facebook Lives around, with your next big event or your next big launch or your next big kind of strategic promotional topic that you have, whether it connects to a new offer or a new product or a conference or whatever it is, and work backwards and select, 4 to 8, maybe 4 to 6 topics that all build up or lead into that, event that's coming up in 6 weeks. So then you're using your content creation as a very productive way to not only connect with your audience, but also educate them on taking action with you, which is going to be a big piece of your business, like the revenue generating part or the impact generating part. And so you might as well tie it together. It only makes sense. Instead of doing kind of random topics that are in your sphere, really just think of, okay, what's happening in the next 2 months and what are the specific topics that connect into that I can talk about and break down into, 4 or 6 different posts. And you can kind of tease that out into your social media as well. So of course, if you have your blog strategy for the next 2 months, and you have a theme that's kind of rolling over that time frame, then you can also use that theme in your social media and kind of chunk down the key messages into smaller bits as well. So yeah, excellent advice. We'll use it in our upcoming event in NYC. Awesome. Yeah. You know what, Mustafa, this is like the best thing that I learned while I was playing around with all of this, really is to the point of your blog and your content is not to just pump out information. It is to have a conversation with your audience. And if you think of it that way, and you think of there being a goal to each post, and not just, a one-off goal, but in the larger conversation, then the topics and the content will come a lot easier to you because you're already planning that event in NYC. You already have thought about, your schedule for that day. So what are the themes for the event? How can you tie that into all of your content leading up to that? Yes, having a conversation. And you know what? That's an idea that I learned mostly from Tara Gentili. She has just a great way of framing this idea of content around and working it into your strategy and thinking of it like a conversation with your audience over a period of time. So I really kind of took that to heart. And in this 3rd year, it was not as strategic or as, coordinated as it could be, but I was still playing around and figuring out which types of content would be a good fit for me to share, or, channels and frequency and all of that stuff. You got to kind of work into it. So that's one way to plan your content. Another thing, of course, and you guys have probably heard this before, is to pay attention to the conversations that you're having in your work and the questions that you're being asked. Every time somebody asks you a question about your work, it's an opportunity to write or speak about it in a piece of content. So you can carry around a notebook and keep track of all those conversations and questions as you go. And then you always have kind of a bank of ideas to go to when you sit down to write or plan your calendar. What's the other thing? Oh yeah, and my kind of final tip, if you're having trouble figuring out what to share, is to plan and give yourself a bit of a structured challenge, which is what I did obviously in this 4-week challenge. It was really a nice way to challenge myself. I should think of a different word for challenge, but to give some structure. So it doesn't have to be, 4 weeks worth of Facebook Lives, but what type of challenge could you give yourself? Could it be, and you can declare it and write it in your posts so that people expect you to write another one, however it connects in, like a 4-week series on a certain topic. You can actually name it, part 1, part 2, part 3. Then you're held more accountable to your readers to deliver on that. So that's kind of a sneaky mind trick to play on yourself to, if you're really feeling like you procrastinate on your content, or you just kind of start things and don't finish them, maybe putting yourself up for that kind of challenge can be a good way to just go for it. So for example, when I started this 4 weeks, I wasn't too worried about it. I knew I had a lot of different topics to talk about, but I also, wasn't sure how it was going to go because I'd never committed to do a daily Facebook Live before. But the thing is, it's been not too bad. And I think it's partly because I just decided, hey, I'm going to do this. And then you do it. You take that decision out of it. And when you kind of give yourself a little bit more of a challenge, you usually step up for it. So that's a bit of a trick. Okay, so we have a question. Really appreciate it if you can share some tips as well about newsletters. Yes, okay, newsletters need content creation for sure. Now, this is another, I'll leave that up, interesting one because, and I played around with this a lot too over the years, is should your newsletter just be sending out your blog post, right? Or should it be something totally different that only your newsletter readers get? Or should it be both, And again, I think it comes down to playing around with different formats, different ways of setting that up and seeing what you like, what comes most naturally to you and what your readers seem to be drawn to. What I end up doing now most of the time is sharing a story. Well, I try to share more stories or kind of more personal connection in the newsletter itself and then link out to the blog posts because the blog posts, hopefully you're creating that content to be evergreen. So it's always relevant. It's always useful for anybody who comes across it. Whereas your newsletter is going to be more time bound, right? So you are sending that in a specific season, in a specific week of your life, and you can share, some of the behind the scenes context or background about, things you're working on or why you wanted to write about that blog, what the topic means as it relates to other things you've talked about. And you can kind of use it as the sitting down for coffee with your reader. Whereas maybe your blog itself is like the newspaper article at the coffee shop, and the newsletter email is you and your friend at the coffee table just chatting. So that's how I kind of like to think about newsletters. Hopefully that helps. But again, you got to kind of get a sense of what works for you. What was I going to say about that too? Oh, the other thing with newsletters or the emails is that a lot of the time you will want to share something time sensitive or do a bit of a promotion or more of a sales type of email. And again, having that personal coffee chat, but talking, have a more clear call to action. So I think a good rule of thumb, and I'm not always great at this because I sometimes have lots that I want to talk about, But a good rule of thumb is to only have one call to action in every newsletter, in every email. So it could be the blog post, some background or some story, or even just, hey, check out the latest and a link. And it's all about go check out the blog, or even read the blog in my email. And then if you want to share it, here's the link. So, but then other emails, you might want to have a whole email dedicated to talking about the event in New York City and, describing the who, what, when, where, how. So the more logistics, or, why would somebody want to come? Or how do you get your ticket? Or, what is it all about? So those types of newsletters might not connect to a blog post, but they should stand alone and still have that one call to action. So a nice way to plan it is to have, how we talked about, have your plan for, 4 to 6 blog posts that tie into whatever the upcoming promotion is. And then, so share those over a month or so, and then have a few emails that are dedicated to Oop. Hello? I'm back. Okay, you guys, I think I froze there for a second. Sorry about that. But I finished my point, so yeah. Is it back? Mustafa, is it back now? Hopefully you can hear me again. Let me know. Yeah, so good point. And call to actions, like you mentioned in the comments here, you also want them in your social media as well. So you want to think of the purpose of every piece of content, right? So is your blog post, good, I'm back, I'm moving again. What's the point of that blog post? When somebody reads it, do you want them to feel more educated about the topic? Do you want them to ask themselves some questions about how they're running their business, or, whatever you're helping them with? Do you want them to take an action in their business? If you know that goal, so in the blog post and in social media and in your newsletter, every piece of content should have that purpose and a call to action to go with it. And yeah, we could probably do a whole nother chat about all the variety of what you could ask people to do in terms of taking action. But I think it's really great to think of that purpose all the time and only have one purpose and one call to action for each piece of content. Because that's the other thing that's really tough when you go to write blog posts or share information, is that, especially if you kind of think as a systems thinker and everything is connected and you are the expert, so you know how everything is connected, and it all, how can I talk about this if I don't talk about this at the same time? Like, it gets kind of mixed up. But you do need to learn how to separate out those topics so that they're digestible, right? So you can only have one point of the article. You can have 3 supporting bullets or supporting stories or supporting examples, but it should all kind of wrap up into one thesis, right? So pretend you're writing an essay for high school or university, or whenever it was in school when you kind of finally realize that an essay needs to have a thesis. And you can kind of take that same thinking into each and every one of your pieces of content. So that's what I've tried to do with each of these daily lives as well, is to have a theme and, I guess, a point to that. So, today I'm talking about content creation, and let's see, what is my point? The main point is that you need to play around with different ways of creating content and find something that works for you, and then do your best to replicate and get consistent with it. So that's my point, and I shared a few different examples or reasons why that was important. And so hopefully, yeah. Okay, Scott, hi, thanks for tuning in. Let's read what you said here. Before throwing content out to your audience, it helps to have an overarching strategy to ensure continuity of your message and that you get the right info to the right people. Yeah. An overall message also helps with saving time on content ideas and creation. For sure. Thanks, Scott, for sharing. And I know this is kind of your jam. So actually, it'd be great to chat with you in more detail about your content strategy. Because what I was kind of sharing in the video, I don't know if you were here the whole time, is that in my third year of business, I was really kind of throwing spaghetti around and trying to figure out some kind of system that would be reliable and consistent and have that messaging that was going to resonate with the right people and be consistent, not in frequency, but also in message, right? And if there was multiple messages, they need to even still among, 12 blog posts, come into different buckets or themes that all support your thesis as a business or your goal as somebody who's supporting whatever group of people. It needs to all be relevant and make sense to each other, right? So yeah, totally important. But Scott, I'd love to hear if you have what your tips are, but maybe it's hard to write in a comment. So yeah, we should find another way to chat about that where you don't have to write so much. But there's a lot of great resources on content creation and, blog strategies. I think the danger in going too far into those resources is that you can get totally overwhelmed, kind of like everything else. If you go too far into a topic on the internet, you feel like you have to do everything in order for it to get you started. And the most important thing for blogging, if you haven't been doing it yet, is to start. You don't need to worry about doing it right until you've been doing it at least a little bit. Once you have one or two under your belt, then you can start to figure out your strategy and your plan and then always improve it, right? So yeah, Scott says the content strategy should follow on from the bigger business strategy and goals, 100%. Otherwise, why are you doing it? There's no point if it's not supporting your goals on the bigger picture. And that's exactly why I suggest that one of my favorite learnings from, since I started is to always be planning your content in a way that supports whatever promotion or call to action you have coming up. And that way it's always in line with your strategy. And it also helps you plan your calendar. So if you don't have kind of a call to action planned for your audience in the next 2 months, something that will have a direct benefit to your business or to your beneficiaries in some way, then you better put that in your plan, and then you better plan some content to support it, because that's the whole point. Otherwise, what are we doing? Yeah. Yeah, just start is definitely the best way to find your voice. And full transparency, Scott, that's pretty much why I decided to do this 4-week challenge, was because I've had, my voice has felt a little bit all over the place to me. Like I've been wanting to feel clearer in how I want to speak about everything and what exactly I want to say. So I wanted to give myself this challenge to reflect on the past 4 years and really just practice sharing all of those lessons learned and see what came up. So there wasn't any specific agendas in terms of topics, but I knew that it all was going to connect into lessons learned over the last 4 years, which is hugely relevant for anyone starting out. Because I know that you guys are going through the same stuff that I've gone through and vice versa. And we're all in it, we all run into the same things. So yeah, this was my way of practicing and finding my voice to just, go for it and see what happens. And yes, an editorial calendar is really good try not to be too crazy with it when you're just starting out, because if you don't want to get discouraged if you're not meeting your impressively your goals that are like one blog post every week without fail. Some people can do that right from the beginning, and some people have a few false starts and then need to get in the rhythm, find their flow, and then they can kind of go for it. So a calendar is great. Just be easy on yourself. Challenge yourself, but don't get down in the dumps about it if you're having trouble accomplishing it, right? Yeah, you know what? Okay, this is confusing for anyone else watching because I know Galileo's name is Mustafa, so I was calling you Mustafa. Anyways, we can invite guests. Maybe, yeah, another time we'll have to plan it out because I don't think I can add anyone now, but it can be done. Yeah, great. And Scott, teaching is a great way to distill what you've learned. Yes. Most of the people teaching online are sharing obviously what they've been through, and that helps a lot of people who are either a few steps behind them or on the same path. So and obviously people that are newer in the path can have a lot to share with people who have been on the path longer too. So I think it definitely goes around. And of course, Scott, because in the association, Solène and I really value that peer-to-peer piece. And we have a lot to learn from each other. So it's all just, you got to share too in order to have that exchange. So I think this whole idea of content creation and blogging is practicing to find your voice, practicing to share so that you can, so other people can learn from you and so that you can receive learnings from other people. And it's the more the merrier, right? Cool. Okay. Thank you guys for joining, and thanks for all the comments. That was really fun. I feel like, yeah, the three of us could hop on a call and do a pretty fun webinar on content. So we might need to do that. But for now, I'm going to sign off and enjoy the evening. And yeah, so thanks for tuning in. And if anybody else watching later wants to hop on for, oh my gosh, 4 a.m. Yeah, you better go to sleep. I would never be up at 4 a.m. Oh my goodness. But thank you for tuning in. And yeah, okay, we'll stay in touch, guys. And if anybody watching this has questions about content creation, shoot me a note and we will all weigh in with some ideas for you. Okay? Bye, everybody.